Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I'm your host Demo, and today I'll be continuing my review of Commander Legends. I'm going to be doing the partners today, and this is probably my third attempt making this video, because every time I make it, I start going in a different direction than what I started with. Originally, I just planned on reviewing every partner, ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. But where I inevitably lead is who do they partner best with? Because that's really all that matters. When it comes to partner commanders, really the most relevant part is the fact that they have partner. That's very important. And your strategy, you can see what the cards do. You can read the cards, you can see what they do. So the strategy and the direction you're going to go depends almost entirely on who they're going to partner with. So the way I'm going to do this video is, first of all, I'm not going to talk about a lot of the, more or less useless partners that I just think there's really nothing to say, like Brian Lynn and Radiant. I'm looking at you. Just very meh, very boring, just bad in general. I think those are the two worst commanders in the whole entire set. So I'm just not going to touch on them at all. There's really no point in me talking at length about a commander that I think is more or less useless. There is a use for it, but it's just not worth talking about. I'm also not going to cover Rograk, Sakashima, and Krark, because those are the three most popular partners in the set. I imagine they're going to be the three most popular commanders or even cards in the entire set in the long run. They're just very versatile. There's a lot of different things you can do with them. And, I think people have already explored lots of different options. Sakashima literally partners with everything. So I'm not going to cover those three just because there's a lot of options, and I don't think it's needed in this video. So with that being said, I'm going to basically cover the matchups that I think work well. I'm going to cover the commanders that I think match well with other partners. First up, Achroma. This is actually a little bit more popular than I expected. 7-drop that's a lot. But the reason why I think it works is because it's a finisher, right? So you can sort of build up your board, and then Achroma comes down and you just start swatting people. I really like her with Falthus. First of all, Falthus is going to give your Achroma Menace and Death Touch. So she's going to have Flying, First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, Menace, Death Touch. That's brutal. But more importantly, I really like the creatures that become available to you in black. Like a Vampire Nighthawk or Gifted Aetherborn. I really like Death Touch. I'm a big fan of Death Touch. It's like having a Ghostly Prison out. It just prevents people from attacking you because they don't want to lose their creature, right? A Vampire Nighthawk is going to be like a 5/6. It's going to be a brutal beater. I just like, there's lots of great cards in black that I think match well with Achroma. Moving on. While we're talking about Falthus, I also think Falthus goes good with Helana, because I think Helana, really the only way you're playing that deck, I think the best way to play that deck is Death Touch Tribal. So those creatures enter the battlefield. They're not fighting. It's just punching, not fighting, right? You pay 2, it deals whatever damage, 1, 2, doesn't matter, because they're going to die from the Death Touch, right? So every time a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you're paying 2 mana to kill one of your opponent's creatures. That seems pretty good. Falthus also, I think, goes really well with Tana, because Tana obviously wants to be attacking, and Falthus wants to allow your other commander to attack and connect. Menace and Death Touch is a brutal combination, right? You have to block with at least 2 creatures in order to block it. So if you block my Tana, you have to block with 2 creatures. I'm going to deal 1 damage to each of them, and I'm going to kill them both. That's brutal. And she has Trample, so you can pump her power with a Rubble Hulk or a Hatred. You're going to kill 2 creatures. You're going to trample through for a bunch of damage. You're going to make a bunch of Sapperling tokens. Geez. That just seems like a really good combination to me. While we're talking about Tana, man, when I was looking at this, she really goes with a lot of these new partner commanders. I think she goes great with Kamal because you can, with Tana, she has a great ability making tokens, but then what are you going to do with them? Just having a bunch of sapling tokens is, it's like, okay, I guess, but really just attacking with sapling tokens is useless. You want to be able to use them for something else. So goes great with Kamal because then you can give them all overrun. Goes great with Casket because then you can sack the tokens to do stuff. Goes great with Dargo because you can sack the tokens to cast Dargo. Goes good with Calith because Calith's going to pump Tana every time she attacks. Goes great with Nadir because Nadir is going to, when your tokens die or you sack them, Nadir gets big. Nadir is also an elf, so Tana and Nadir are also elves. So that you can go that route as well. And Nadir makes elves, so you can even possibly go an elf tribal sort of strategy. Goes good with Numa. I don't think Numa is very good at all. However, does go good with Tana. Again, both elves. You can put a couple of counters on Tana, make her bigger. And then, of course, goes good with Prava, because Prava likes tokens. So, man, Tana really partners well with a lot of these new partner commanders. Okay, let's talk about Alharu. I like Alharu. I like commanders that are doing a couple of different things, even though both of her abilities rely on +1/+1 counters. So that's basically the strategy you're going to want to go. I just like that she has two different abilities that are slightly different. I don't know why are they not using... Her ability is support 2. When she comes into the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter. That's support 2. Why don't they just say support 2 when she enters the battlefield? Support 2. I don't know why they don't use their own terminology. Why don't they reuse? It's just like tireless tracker. That has landfall. Why not just say landfall on it? I don't get it. I don't know why they do that. Anyway, I digress. So Slurk is the obvious partner here. That's the one that's dealing with +1/+1 counters. Also green. As I said before, Celsnia seems to be the new +1/+1 counters color combination. So Slurk seems like the obvious, partner here. Also Ich-Tekik, green, and making +1/+1 counters, although I don't like that one as much because that's more of an artifact theme. Slurk seems really good. Also, if you make that deck, you get to use Sigil Captain, which is a card I've been wanting to put in a deck for a long time, right? Sigil Captain, one of your creatures with a +1/+1 counter dies. Alharu makes a spirit token, and then you stack the triggers so that the token comes into play, gets 2 counters from Sigil Captain, and then gets another counter from Slurk. So you're getting a 4/4 flyer every time one of your creatures dies. That's pretty good. I'm not a big fan of that kind of deck, but it would be fun to play. Alharu, goes with any of these +1/+, anything that says +1/+1 counters, like Sangir. Really, that's the only direction I see Sangir going to. He's not great, but you can put him in a +1/+1 counters theme deck. Nadir, again, great matchup. Nadir matches so well with so many cards. And, of course, Rayhan is another really obvious one. I like Alharu with Nadir, though, most of all, because they are both care about +1/+1 counters, and they are both making tokens. So it seems like a really... there's a lot of synergy there, right? Alharu makes tokens, then the token dies, Nadir gets a counter, then Nadir dies, Nadir makes more tokens. It just seems like a lot of really great synergy there. Moving on, Armix... again, another guy that partners a lot with, first of all, he goes with any partner that cares about artifacts, right? So Silas or Akiri. He partners with any commander that makes artifacts like Togo. He's a great match with Togo because you're going to want lots of artifacts in play. I like him with Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro because you have 2 commanders that want to be attacking, which, that's a good way to build a deck around a theme like that. And then you are discarding a card, and then you just get that card right back. So that seems good. I think the best matchup for him, though, is Silas. It just seems like a natural fit to discard a artifact card, kill a creature, and then play that card from your graveyard with Silas. Again, 2 commanders that want to be attacking all the time, so you're going to build around that theme. Maybe have some stuff in there that makes your guys unblockable. Also, Armix is I think a lock for the 99 in a Glissa deck. If I had a Glissa deck, Armix would go in there for sure. He's an artifact. He attacks. You discard an artifact, kill your opponent's creature, and then Glissa triggers, and you get that card right back. That seems like a great match in that deck. Moving on, Togo, another guy that just goes with a lot of different stuff. Again, he's making artifact tokens. So any deck that cares about artifacts, Armix, Akiri, right? Anything like that. Any deck that cares about tokens. So Nadir cares about tokens, right? Non-creature tokens, obviously, so it's not going to partner with Prava. Anyone that wants to be sacrificing stuff, Casket is great with this because you can sacrifice the rock tokens. He goes well, as people have pointed out, with Kodama of the East Tree, because every time one of those, you play a land. By the way, again, he has landfall. Why don't they just put landfall on this card? I don't get it. Why write it out like that? He has landfall. Just put landfall. I don't know why they don't reuse their own terminology. It's like writing on a card, any damage this creature deals, you gain that much life. Yeah, it's called lifelink. They just put lifelink on there. Like, why are you writing it out? I don't get it. I thought they were trying to save words. Anyway, Togo goes great with Kodama of the East Tree because every time you play a land, a token comes into play, which allows you to play another land. And also, because you played a land, so basically, with Kodama of the East Tree and Togo in play, you get to play an infinite amount of lands, right? Because you play a land that triggers both of your commanders, and Kodama of the East Tree says, okay, a token came into play, something came into play that I didn't put in play, so you get to put another land into play because a land is a 0-drop, the token is a 0-drop. They really screwed up on that card, I think. It should have said either non-token or non-land, one of those. It's way too powerful the way it is. A lot of people have come up with a lot of busted combos with this card. I accidentally stumbled on one myself, which I'll get to. It should have said either non-token or non-land permanent, or it should have said lesser converted mana cost, not equal or lesser. That's just, you're not excluding a lot there. So anyway, pretty busted, I think. There's just a lot of crazy things that you can do with it. Togo also partners well with Ich-Tekik because he wants artifacts. He wants you to be sacking artifacts. Great combo there. So Togo really partners with a lot of different stuff. I suspect he's not going to be as popular as those other 3 that I mentioned before, Rograk, Sakashima, and Krark, but he's going to be close because he just does a lot of different things. Next up, I'm going to talk about Nadir. Already talked about him quite a bit. Like I said, I really like him with Alharu. He's good with Togo. This card I think is probably the most underrated card in the set because it's doing so much, right? You care about tokens, right? You're putting +1/+1 counters on them, so you can do that sort of theme. You can do a token theme, a +1/+1 counters theme. You can do an elf tribal because he's an elf and he makes elves. He just goes in so many different decks. And what I love about him the most is he has a leaves the battlefield trigger, which is so great. You get 3 elf tokens out of Nadir every single time, no matter what. When he leaves the battlefield, if someone paths him, if someone cyclonic rifts, as soon as he leaves the battlefield, you get 3 tokens because his power is already 3. He doesn't need any counters on him at all. You automatically get 3 counters. As soon as he hits the board, you're getting 3 elf tokens. I don't see any way that you don't. It sucks when you play your commander and then it dies right away and you have nothing to show for it. I just really don't like that. I like being able to get some value out of him. So he's my favorite commander, partner commander in the set, I think. And I myself am making a very interesting deck with him and Miara, who I also like. I'm making a mono black elves deck. And I know people will say, well, there's not very many mono black elves. True, but Nadir makes elves, right? That's what's so great about him. So And I'll probably do a deck tech on that because it's a really interesting deck. And I didn't have a mono black deck, so that's pretty neat. It's also kind of neat to go monocolored with partners. That's something you don't see very often. I mean, obviously you didn't see it at all before, but now you can. All right, Ich-Tekik, as I said, partner's good with Togo. Obviously he's really good with Armix because Armix is a golem. But I don't know if I like that route. Ich-Tekik doesn't care about artifacts in your graveyard. Armix does. Ich-Tekik isn't really making artifact. It makes one golem artifact. That's it. It's more of a +1/+1 counters thing. This might seem like an obvious matchup just because Armix is a golem. So you're going to be putting counters on your Armix. I don't love it. I like Ich-Tekik better with Akiri. And the reason why is because Ich-Tekik, a lot of people are going, oh, I'm going to sacrifice lots of artifacts and put counters on my stuff. Like with Togo. I mean, okay, great. But it has nothing to Ich-Tekik, first of all, he's a green artificer. That's got to be the first. This card is this looks like a white card, maybe blue. It's weird that it's green. It's weird that green's doing artifact stuff now. Apparently green just does everything. As a lot of people have pointed out, it's kind of getting ridiculous with green. They just do whatever they want now. I have a feeling this card was originally white, and then they just needed another uncommon green in this, and they just swapped this one. Like, it makes no sense this is green. Anyway, Ich-Tekik reads whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. That means anyone's artifact, right? I think the way you build this deck is Ich-Tekik and Akiri. You have access to all of the best artifact removal in white, red, and green. You just go to town, destroying your opponents are going to be playing artifacts. I guarantee it. It's rare to ever see a deck in EDH that does not have artifacts in it. So your opponent's going to be playing mana rocks, whatever, and you just sit back and you Vandal Blast and you Croson Grip and whatever, and your stuff just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? I think for me that's probably the way that I would go. I wouldn't go so much Golem Tribal as I would do with that. That just seems like the best way to go. Just destroy everyone's artifacts and just keep putting stuff. And then on top of that, you get access to, Smothering Tithe, Dockside Extortionist, because also treasure tokens. Every time you sack a treasure token, you're getting the counters. Man, that just seems so good. I might make that deck. Okay, moving on. Rebbec. I'm just going to talk about Rebbec for a little bit. Again, the obvious matchups here are Armix and Silas because they are the two artifact partner commanders. So they match up really well with Rebbec because they automatically give them self-protection. I won't talk about that too much. What I did want to talk about is when Rebbec first came out, everyone's like, oh, well, you already have Padim or you already have Leonid Abunis. They're both better. Hexproof, and I've even heard the guys on Command Zone erroneously refer to it as hexproof. It's not the same thing, right? Protection means that you can't be blocked by that converted mana cost, okay? So if you're playing with Armix or Silas, both of who want to be attacking all the time, first of all, they're both 3-drops, so they can't be blocked by a 3-drop, right? Any artifact, so if you have a 1 mana cost artifact, a 2, you're going to have a 3, and then a 4 and a 5, you're almost having an unblockable, a creature that is unblockable and really, really hard to remove. I mean, that's pretty damn good. The one thing I want to point out here, though, you can't put equipment in this deck. Okay, people, I've looked at it already. You can't put equipment in this deck. It doesn't work, right? You can't, well, you can, but you can't put it on your Armix or your Silas. If you have a Lightning Greaves is an artifact converted mana cost 2. That means your Silas and your Armix have protection from converted mana cost 2. That means you won't be able to equip them with it. You won't be able to equip them with Sword of Feast and Famine, right? Sorry, it doesn't work. No equipment works in these decks, right? Again, you can put it on your Rebbec because she's not an artifact, but that's probably not what you want to do. You want to load up your Armix and your Silas. Doesn't work. You can't equip. That's the one downside to that strategy. All right, moving on. I just want to talk about Katus for a bit too. The damage that Katus deals is not combat damage. So when you can't, partnering Katus with Timna or Ikra or Tana doesn't work. I mean, it does. It still does the damage, but you're not getting the effect. You're not getting, right? So your Tana will smack one opponent, and you get your Saproling tokens from that one. But then the damage that's done to all the other opponents is just damage. It doesn't get you anything. So not a great matchup. The only cards that I think match with Katus are Malcolm and Breaches, the two pirate commanders. They both don't care about combat damage. It's just damage. Malcolm is obviously the best matchup here. I think this is a great matchup. In fact, another deck I'm probably going to make, I don't even think this is a pirate deck. I think this is a Malcolm deck. Like, you don't need to be putting really a whole lot of pirates in this deck. You're just going to be making a ton. So Malcolm's going to connect. Katus is going to trigger. You're going to get 3 treasure tokens, assuming there's 4 players. You're just going to be making tons of tokens. You give Malcolm double strike, and now you get 6 tokens. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to do an artifact themed deck, because red and blue, is good in artifacts. And then I'm just going to use those treasure tokens to do crazy things. I think it's a really cool deck. Also works with Breaches again, but then you're in mono red, so I don't know how great that could be. I mean, it could be interesting. The only other thing here is Bruce Tarl, I think, also goes well with Breaches and Malcolm, because he's giving double strike. So that might be you could do Malcolm, Bruce Tarl, and maybe swing something there. Next up, I wasn't really going to talk about Timna or Thrasios. Timna and Thrasios are just so obvious. They just go with everything. Like Thrasios, you could put Thrasios with Elegith, for example. And every time you use Thrasios' ability, you're just drawing 2 cards instead of scrying. You just, I guess you would draw 2 cards and any lands would go directly into play. So it just makes Thrasios even better. Really not much to talk. Thrasios just goes with everything. Timna just goes with, because drawing cards and scrying and playing lands, everyone wants to draw and play lands. Every deck wants to do that. So those are always going to be good. This is why I hate Tatiova so much. I mean, what's the strategy there? You want to draw cards and play lands and gain life? Like, what deck doesn't want to do that, right? But anyway, I just want to point out Essior. Essior and Timna is the perfect match, I think. I think Esper Colors is great in Timna because you have all those control options. Timna and Thrasios are the #1 commanders, partner commanders that people want to get off the table right away. And Essior has evasion as well. So you play your Essior turn 2. Timna comes out turn 3. You swing with Essior. Essior is going to be a almost guaranteed, draw a card every turn. It just seems like a great partnership. Okay, moving on. Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro. This guy is another guy that I'm really, when I first saw him, I wasn't too excited. But when I started using him, I'm like, oh man, the card advantage. As long as you're connecting every turn, you're almost drawing a card every turn, basically. It's almost like a Timna. Not quite that good, but almost. And in a way, it can be better. Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro goes great with Ravos, because he's always also getting stuff back from your graveyard, and Tormod, because Tormod wants you to be, you attack with, you put something, you discard something, you hit with Ghost, you get that thing back, Tormod makes a zombie token. Basically these 3 guys are sort of interchangeable. Tormod also goes with Ravos for the same reason. Ghost and Ravos, Ghost and Tormod. You can interchange the 3 of these and make some pretty cool decks. I've made a Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro and Ravos deck. It's a deck I've been wanting to make for a long time. It uses Transmute. I love Transmute. It is way underrated. It doesn't get used nearly enough. I'm going to pump it a lot on this channel. It's a great way to tutor without using any of those expensive tutors, like Vampiric Tutor or Mystical Tutor or whatever. It's a great tutor. Also works with cycling, right? You're discarding, so you discard something, you get it back with Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro. He works great with Transmute. He works great with cycling. If you're self-milling, it's also a great way. I talked about how I don't like Arami because of the self-milling. Or that, I guess the part I don't like about Arami is the self-milling, I should say. If you're going to do that, you mill a demonic tutor in your graveyard, Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro is a great way to get it back. So I like that a lot. I'll probably do a deck tech on my Ghost Ravos deck. It's a really cool, interesting deck. Lots of Transmute, lots of cycling, get that stuff back. All right, moving on. I'm going to end with Tormod. Tormod's another guy that there's just so many cards that he goes with. Again, Ravos he goes with. He goes with Silas because you can attack right? It's any card out of your graveyard. That's the important part. When I first saw this, I just assumed creatures, but he goes with everything. So Silas, you attack with Silas, you cast an artifact out of your graveyard, you get a zombie token, right? I don't know if that's the best matchup for him necessarily. He just goes well with a lot of stuff. You're going to want to build your deck around Tormod. He can pretty much partner with almost anything. You could partner with Keskit maybe, so that you can sack some of those tokens to get some value out of it. You can partner with Nadir, if you want to just get some value out of those tokens. He just goes with so many. You can partner with Prava and you can pump those tokens up. He just goes with so many different commanders. You can go zombie tribal if you want to. I stumbled across a fantastic one while I was doing this, preparing for this video. He really goes well with Kodama of the East Tree. I'm going to do a deck tech on this. I can't remember which review of this set I was watching, but someone's like, hey, put Crucible of Worlds in your Tormod deck because you can play a land from your graveyard and get a zombie token. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And I thought, well, why not build your whole deck around that? Why not build a Gitrog monster style deck where you're playing lots of lands from your graveyard, making zombie tokens, and every time the zombie token comes into play, you get to put another land from your hand into play because of Kodama and the East Tree. I mean, man, and I started looking up cards. This whole strategy of playing lands from your graveyard and whatnot, like sort of the Gitrog style, works really well with Kodama and Tormod. It works, Ayula's Influence. I'm going to discard, this is just one thing I thought up. You discard some land cards to make bear tokens, which triggers Kodama. Then you get Life from the Loam. You cast your Life from the Loam, get the cards back, you make more zombie tokens, and then when you make the tokens, you get to put the lands you just got back right back into play. I mean, it's a really great... I'm really excited to build this deck, and I'm really excited to make a deck tech about it. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Like I said, there's probably at least 3 or 4 deck techs I'm going to do of these partner combinations. I really want to start getting into deck techs, and so I'm going to make one more video reviewing some of the cards in the 99 from Commander Legends, and then I'm going to jump into the deck techs because that's the part that I'm really excited about. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.